Humane Marketers. Sarah Znekrocha here. Welcome to another episode of the Humane Marketing Podcast, a place to be for the generation of marketers who cares. This is the show where we talk about marketing your business in a way that feels good to you, is aligned with your values, and also resonates more with your conscious customers because it's not pushy, ethical, and also beautiful. So if you're a regular here, you know that I'm organizing the conversations around the 7 Ps of humane marketing. And if you're new here and this is your first time, welcome. I'm so excited you're here. You may want to download your one-page marketing plan with the 7 Ps of humane marketing in the form of a mandala at humane.marketing/one page, the number 1 and page. So again, humane.marketing/one page. And with that, with no further ado, let's dive into today's conversation. Leisa, it's good to talk to you. So glad to have you back on the Humane Marketing Podcast. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I love what you're up to in the world, and I'm so happy to talk to you today.
Likewise. We had already a long discussion before we hit record, and we can bring some of that in this conversation now, but maybe a little bit more focused around money and your new book, The Money Catalyst. So where do we start this conversation? I think I want to start with you kind of sharing about your money story and how this became your life's work, really.
I have totally been obsessed with money from a very young age, and I will, call myself out and say not in a healthy way for many years of my life. And it wasn't until 11 years ago when I walked away from being a financial advisor, from having worked in the money business for over 2 decades here in the United States, and being very disenchanted. I actually recently created a video about that disenchantment that took off, which was really funny because it's not easy to disconnect from the matrix. You know it, I know it. It took me 10 years to actually tell the story of why I left. And, there's been 164,000 people that were interested in that story, which just cracks me up because it is not easy to admit that we're a part of a very broken system when it comes to money. And I didn't know that when I started my business. I just was like, well, how can I help people understand money better? Because if they understand money better, then they'll be able to build wealth, which is what my husband and I had been able to do for ourselves. But I will say now that it's not as simple as I thought. That's the moral of the story. I thought I could help everybody just through education, and it's more complicated than that.
Yeah, I think that leads me to the next topic, which is self-worth. Would you agree with that? That is maybe one of the big topics of the book as well?
Yeah, because like I talked about in my first book, how we see money has a lot to do with how we see ourselves. And so if we feel disempowered, then our relationship and our experiences with money are going to reflect that disempowerment. And if we feel confident and we feel resilient and we feel well-resourced, not that we have all the answers, but that we know where to get the answers and that we're confident that we won't stop until we get the information that we need, that changes how we go about our experiences with money. Does it solve everything? No. But does it help us? Most definitely.
Yeah. So the book, the second book now, the Money Catalyst, is very different from the first book. First of all, because it's a novel, right? I thought that was genius because I remember I was in your community when the first book came out. And to be honest with you, the first edition, the first draft was not very good of the Mindful Millionaire. I'm like, there's some stuff missing here. And so now you've really evolved and, written this beautiful novel around the money catalyst and Muriel going the main protagonist is called Muriel, and she's going through these transformations, 8 catalysts around money. So, yeah, tell us a little bit about how this was, to write a novel, but then also about the story around Muriel.
Yeah. So it's Mirabelle,
Oh,
but
it's Maribel, sorry, not
yeah,
Muriel.
but I love that name. It's funny because it kind of reminds me of my best friend's mom. Her name is Muriel. So she is on a journey, and I needed to write it this way, not because it had I didn't know I could write a fiction book. First of all, I just want to tell everyone this was a huge feat to take on, but these characters wanted to come through and I literally let them. And then I figured out how to write a fiction based story because their stories were so strong inside of me. And I think that the stories are a collection of myself and the thousands of people that I've met who have shared their money stories with me. And I realized when I was kind of getting into it that this medium would allow me to bring people into an experience that would allow the reader to see themselves in something that they've never read anywhere else before. And only through fiction would I be able to create that very emotional experience for the reader that would allow them to have breakthroughs, not necessarily because their story is identical to what's going on, but because there's journaling questions and there's thought-provoking exchanges that happen that I have had with other people or I have read about and thought, this is brilliant. More people need to know about this. How can I bring these conversations into the characters? And I don't know, story, right? Is you talk about this all the time. Story is everything. If we can connect into story, it's going to stick with us. It's going to help us way more than just thinking through some model. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so true. And it really, you successfully achieved that because I was just reading the first few chapters and I'm like, she's talking about me. I didn't give my, I didn't give my thumbs up that you can write that a book about me. That's exactly how it felt, right? And during the year that we worked together, those were the stories that came up. And and I think you're right, like the way I remember, okay, I screwed up her name, but I'm like, yeah, I know this person, it's like I kind of followed her journey, and so it's so true that these stories is what stays with us, not here's your 8 steps to financial success. It's like, well, I'm sure people have read tons of these books and still are not wealthy, right? The question is, do we really want to get to that? Or do we want to do that deeper inner work so that we find abundance and not necessarily only wealth? But
Yeah.
discuss that after.
Well, I have a question too for you because there's the main character, but then there's Leela and Ethan and Tanya. And I'm curious from your perspective, did you also see yourself in those characters too?
Mm. I saw Tony and the Ethan's character maybe. I don't know if I saw myself in the other character or yeah, maybe there was moments where I also saw the lightness of I think it
Yeah.
was Leela. So yeah, what you're saying, I guess, is that we're not always, we have moments and sometimes our money story can weigh us down and we feel really heavy around certain things, and other moments are lighter. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do talk to me about the transformation that Maribel went through, and whether maybe you want to share kind of a turning point in the story, like, and we don't want to just make it about the story. We don't want to assume that, people have all read your book. So just kind of like in
Yeah.
general, in a money story, like what is a turning point that you've seen maybe also with your clients when there's this big aha or awakening to understanding something about yourself and your thoughts on money?
Two come to mind. The first being maybe the way that I'm going about my life and my choices and my decisions isn't actually helping me get where I want to go. So that's like her first turning point, this realization like, wait a minute, I thought I did everything right. And yet I don't think it's actually giving me what I want. But then the other big turning point is a realization that things that happened to her when she was young have a lot to do with the unconscious creations that she's got going on in her life now. And so the turning point being like, and I know you know this, and anyone who's ever worked with me, there are these pivotal moments where you're like, are you freaking kidding me? This one thing has like set my life in motion to go a certain direction. And yet that is not who I am. That is not what I want it to have defined my life. And so she has a few of those, one in particular, where it's all about self-worth. It takes us back to where you started, right? That she was thinking that she's less than and that she's not worthy of having a voice, of speaking out, of telling people how she really feels in her life. And all because of this event that occurred. And so when she realizes it, it takes some time, but she starts rebuilding her life by testing the waters with her relationship with her partner, with her relationship with her friends, with the relationship she has with herself, and also learning from this coach. And so I feel like I have chills all over because I don't know who I would be right now had I not had many of those happen. And where I feel most proud about my work, particularly one-to-one work, is when I've just been able to show somebody something that was wanting to come into the world to be seen. And because of that, they start rewriting their lives in just such beautiful ways. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what if that could happen for people reading the book? Like, oh my gosh, that just gets me obviously a little bit crazy excited.
Mhm. Yeah. So really what I'm hearing you say, it's a book about money, but it's not about the money. It
Right.
really, it's this concept in marketing, sell them what they want and give them what they need. So what people want is, a book about money. Oh yeah, the money catalyst. I'm going to learn how to be a money catalyst. And yet what they need is to go deeper, find out who they are, find their true purpose in life, and then maybe the money will come, or at least enough money will come. But what they're really getting is fulfillment and, purpose and just living a good life, right?
Yeah. And it was interesting because obviously I used money in the title. This is the work that I like to teach about. And there are these practical strategies that come about towards maybe the three quarters of into the book. And it's funny because I really struggled with those because there's like so many things that I've learned, right, that could help people, but I had to keep putting it through almost like a sifter. Like, if I was only going to give a few tips that could have the biggest impact on someone's mindset about money, what might those look like? Because I don't want this to just be the 5 tips that are going to change your life, although there are 5 tips about making more money and 5 tips about saving more money. But it was just kind of like icing on the cake. It's not like the cake's got to be really, really good. And this is just something that satisfies that part of us that want to make sure that we're doing what we can, but it's just really simplified.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the tangible value that people are looking for in a book or a program and all of that. But what they're really walking away with is the intangible value, the inner growth and the belief in themselves and all of that. Yeah. Yeah, it's wonderful. In my upcoming book, Business Like We're Human, I talk about money motivators. And so really going back to the why, really understanding as a change maker, why do you need money and why do you want to make money? Because often I remember when we worked together, when was it? 2018 or 19, I think. I kept telling you, but I'm not motivated by money. That's not my motivation. And so I'm thinking that a lot of change makers and people who are listening are the same. It's like, yeah, of course we need money. And what I often see in the heart-centered business space is like people don't actually ask for money or are not good at receiving money, that kind of thing. Because maybe it could be 2 things, either because yes, we feel like we're not worthy or the work we're doing is not worthy. So that's a problem. Or like me, I'm just like not motivated by money. So I ask them in the book to think about their motivations for making money. And so how do you see your work kind of tying into, a more human-centered way of doing business and wanting to create impact? Really, the real outcome is that we want to measure is impact. Of course, it's money to have enough, to pay our bills, but what we really want is impact. So how do these 2 worlds collide?
I think that impact has changed a lot for me over the years. As you know, my husband was diagnosed with prostate cancer a few years ago, and he's full recovery now. But that experience really changed my perspective a lot about money. And this book is definitely inspired by that. So what I saw was that the motivators behind money are something that are kind of like an onion skin, where depending on what you're going through in life and the challenges you're facing, your motivators are likely going to change. And even as we age, right? So I'm, 58, and the experience I have with money is going to be different than my daughter who's 27. But I think that it's very helpful, like you're talking about, to focus on these motivators so that you understand that it may change, that you're not bad or wrong for not having money be a motivator, but money is important in the world that we live in. It helps to find a positive motivator versus a negative motivator, right? So a negative motivator is going to be fear and scarcity and revenge. And I mean, there's just a lot of really bad things that we can attach to money. So let's turn that around and say, well, could I be motivated by creativity? I'm excited about the creativity that happened this past year in writing this book. I know that if I can figure out how for this book to make an impact and I'm able to get positive feedback from people reading the book, it's going to, and selling the book is part of that, right? So if I sell more copies of the book and people love it and they give feedback that is positive, it's going to motivate me to be more creative in the future. And all of a sudden it has very little to do with the money. It has more to do with the feelings I get when I'm incredible in that flow state and just like creating things that I never thought were possible because they're coming out of me from that inspiration, like that's what's going to matter to me. But I feel like everybody needs to be self-reflective in what are the motivators. In the book with Mirabelle, she thinks it's all about like achieving this sort of, utopian idea of money and security and safety. But when she's in the journey, she realizes it's about the relationship she has with herself and the relationship that she has with others, her mother, her husband, her friends. And that is where the majority of her wealth is really coming from in the book.
Yeah. Another thing that came to mind is that, yes, we want to have enough money to pay the bills, but right now with, the problems we're facing in the world, that needs a lot of money as well, or not a lot, but it needs money as well to make more conscious choices. Actually, right now is a privilege. And so, if I want to go buy organic vegetables, well, I need more money, which is an irony, but that's how it is right now. And so thinking about your money motivators and thinking, well, yeah, I actually want to make money so I can make good choices. I think that might help people like us who don't just want to sit on money, but want to, contribute to this change. And so small choices like that will help us, be part of the solution and not the problem.
Yeah, because you're right. Like when we have resources, we are able to make conscious choices about the things that we buy, the things that we invest in, the causes that we donate in, to the even the business that we create. Like right now, you and I both know that there are a lot of people, and this is not a judgment. I'm just saying, I feel like it's a privilege that I can speak out about what I don't believe in, and I can talk about those things. And I know that I'm better able to do that because I am not worried I'm going to lose my job. I'm not worried about losing my clients. If I lose clients because of me speaking what's true to me, it's okay. I can financially weather that. That's incredible privilege right now that I feel almost an obligation that if I have something going on, I feel like it can be contributing, then I want to be able to speak up about it. And money gives me that ability. I don't think that I would be this person that I am right now without that freedom that I feel.
Yeah, that's so true to realize our privilege and see that. How do you, so we keep talking about money, which yes, is still needed in this world right now, foreseeably for, at least the next 10, 20 years, maybe much more, I don't know. But how do you see the future? Like, will money always be part of that future? Or is there a tiny part in you where you're thinking or hoping that, we're going to something else?
Yeah. I think it's important to maybe define what it is I'm talking about. So I think of money as being controlled for the most part by governments, centralized governments. And I'm going to say currency is something very different. It can be something very different. So to me, ultimately, we will need to move to currency that is not controlled by the federal bank, the Federal Reserve in the US and the other, bank reserves throughout the world, because they have not proven the ability to be trustworthy in the way that most of us think that they are supposed to be acting. What do I mean by that? Geopolitical chaos, I'll just say that, is often at the hand of the governments and the way that they play with, we could even say F with, the monetary supplies throughout the world.
Right.
The less that happens, the more pure we could say. And interesting enough, you live right in Switzerland. I feel like it's still happening there, but maybe not to the same extent as it's happened in other places. That's why people go to this.
Oh, it's happening here too.
It's happening. Yes, yes. It's just there's some thought that maybe it's more stable than other currencies. Whether you believe that or not, I'm just pointing it out because a lot of people choose to move their money to Switzerland because they're trying to get out of this. But the whole reason that Bitcoin and these electronic, forms of currency have arisen have a lot to do with creating currency outside of those channels. Are they the utopian that people want? Depends on how you look at it. I've been doing a lot more research about it because we want freedom. We want freedom from manipulation. Everybody wants that. And nobody wants to be manipulated. Nobody wants to be played with. And so ultimately, people do need a way of barter, right? Of you do this, I do that, somebody else does that, and somebody else does that. The idea that you and I are going to be able to help each other and it's just going to go back and forth is not going to work. We are going to need other people. We're going to need other resources. We are part of a collective experience. That means we need currency to be able to do business with each other. I want it to be as pure as possible without being manipulated. What that looks like, Bitcoin's probably the only gold, silver, Bitcoin, they're the only thing right now. And I do say Bitcoin because the other currencies do not have the same degree of stability that Bitcoin has been earning.
Right.
So whether it is that or something else, the cool thing is it was invented and that very pure people wanted it to exist on the planet. And they walked away from what could be trillions of dollars. We're talking people that could be the most powerful people on the planet walked away from it. And the money
that whole Satoshi story, it's just blows your mind. So just if you're listening, Google what's his last name?
Satoshi. Even if you just put in Satoshi
Satoshi Bitcoin,
you'll find videos.
The mystical story of the inventor of Bitcoin, who then just disappeared. Don't know where he is, and he still owns I don't know how many millions of Bitcoin.
I think it's worth $1 trillion. It's crazy amounts of money are in the system that aren't intended to be taken out. So it creates a baseline. But let's face it, greed is the problem. Greed, human greed. And they tried to build a system that it can't be immune from greed because as long as you've got power players that can play with the amount of trading that they're doing with it, greed can still be there. But greed is our biggest problem as human beings when it pertains to currency and monetary supply.
Yeah.
And until we figure out how to get that behavior under control, we will always end up back where we are today.
I think it has to do with abundance, because if we always feel scarcity and lack, then there will always be greed, right? And so, I just recently read this book, Stellar, where they talk about a world of abundance and free energy, basically created by solar and wind. And if you give a civilization free energy, well, pretty much the rest is going to be easy, right? And the thing is, we already have the technology for that. It's just a matter of, systemic change. It's all bureaucracy, basically, that's holding the next step back. And it's the same with Bitcoin. Obviously, the governments don't want to just move to Bitcoin and let, people own the money. They're trying to stop that. And so, yeah, I think in the end, it's a matter of the consciousness rising and the old paradigm people just kind of, naturally dying out and the new people coming up because yeah, the Satoshi story just shows that there's people with good intentions, a lot of people with good intentions in this world. And so we just need them to become the leaders. And once they do, I think things can go really quickly. Because we have the technology, because we have the currency, we have AI, all of that. Well, it's not that far-fetched. It really isn't, right?
Yeah, I mean, integrity, love, when we talk about raising consciousness, it is, if you imagine greed's almost at the bottom of the scale, and you imagine like love and above, people may have heard that idea, like 500, if you go by David Hawkins' scale of consciousness, if people are not operating from a place of empathy and love and integrity, it's like, this is so weird, like poop in a soup. Like you're not going to want to eat that soup because you know what's in it. Like you have to be like, you have to figure out a way to operate. And this is what was intended with Bitcoin. Like you have to figure out how to create systems that can operate outside of those lower level energies.
I'll always have that image of the poop in the soup now. It's like, okay, I don't want to eat that soup for sure.
No.
Yeah, but no, I get it. It's like it. You don't necessarily even see it, but you know it. And so you're like, I want to be in a different restaurant for sure, but different system altogether. Yeah.
I think this is also, let's give credit to everyone, when they say I'm not motivated by money. I think a lot of that comes from that feeling. I'm not motivated by this thing that people do really bad things in the spirit of.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's so true. It's like if money was this beautiful thing where it feels like, oh, and we're just, yeah. And I have that with some collaborations where I'm like, oh, it's going to be so good to send you money, right? Where, yeah, it feels like a good thing. You're right. It's all about the feeling that is embodied in us that we grew up with. And I think, a lot of, our past is tied to that as well. Yeah.
Well, it's changing the intention, just like everything that you do, all the books that you write, like everything that you teach. I feel like you're helping people to change their intentions so that they can get the fuel that they need to build their business rather than constantly feeling like they're driving down the road with a tire that's blown out, which is what it feels like when you are struggling with the capitalistic system.
Right. Yeah. So what do we do now? Because we're not there yet in this beautiful world. What do people who are listening, maybe you mentioned these tips in the book, right? Like what is a couple of small things that can do right now to get that warm feeling of safety, at least, for the next year or so?
In the book, early on, when Mirabelle finds a coach and she starts working with her, there's this concept of awake that's introduced. And it's interesting, Sarah, because you know me, I love frameworks and I love, sort of setting them up. This is one that keeps coming back and showing me more and more. There's a lot there, and especially in the times that we're in. So awake is like awareness, willingness, acceptance, kindness, and embodiment. And this coach takes Maribel through this process and says, this is what I want you to use, like on a daily basis. I want you to help yourself. And I'm going to show you all the different ways that this process can help you, depending on the challenges that you're facing. And what's funny is I did not do this based on David Hawkins' work. It's funny because I haven't really looked at his work in a long time. And I was looking at Power versus Force, which is a very famous book, if anybody's read it, just last night. And I was like, oh my gosh, when you are feeling fear, when you are feeling worry, when you are feeling concern about, face it, the disruption that's going on in this world, Awake is basically helping you take stair steps to get out of that feeling very, very quickly. And I had no idea. So it continues to show me the importance. So I'm using it because I'm like, I get sad. I get scared. I get upset when I see things that are happening in the United States right now. And I've noticed that only when I'm in this state of like embodiment of love and embodiment of care and concern, can I be helpful to others? Can I be helpful to myself? So I feel like we have to go back to our practice. We have to go back to our mats. We have to have rituals that help us make sure that when we're out there in the world running our businesses, when we're out there speaking, when we're out there making money, we can do it from the place of these higher levels of consciousness rather than what we're seeing in the news and what we're seeing being discussed, which is harmful and violent.
Yeah. Yeah. So really it's going more into the being and not think that you have to necessarily do more in order to, get more. It's really going back to the being, that practice of being that helps you become resilient so that you can do the things that you're good at. Do your life's work and whatever it is. Yeah, it's so true.
And you still can take good care of yourself. You still have to make money. So if you're focused on who you're being, then you have good structures for the doing, what business are you in? Are you clear about your motivation? Are you clear about the value that you're creating in other people's lives? Like all of those things are very important. But I think in order to be resilient in these times, we're going to be going back and forth over and over again between the being and the doing at a whole other level.
Yeah. It really, and I think we talked, I don't remember if it was before we hit record, but we talked about the individualistic kind of part of capitalism and greed and all of that. And I really see we have to get out of that. We have to, right now, all you see is what countries are doing and what Trump is doing is like this country against this one and separating people, right? And instead, we need to actually, collaborate together. And that goes from a world perspective, but it's also for us solopreneurs. It's like this openness to share with others that things are hard right now. That alone gives you so much inner peace, and that creates resilience. And then you can, out of the conversations that you're having, you can create solutions. And yet I see the opposite happening. I see people pulling back because they're completely overwhelmed with what's happening and pulling back and cutting costs. And that creates more isolation, which is not what we need. Yeah.
Yeah. What I hear you talking about, and correct me if I'm wrong, is we have to find new ways to build trust in the world that we're living in, because the trust in the existing systems, at least from my perspective, is falling apart.
Right.
And what might that look like in the future? when, you have communities, and I'm pretty sure, and I have communities, like, what's one of the most important things to each of us inside of that community but trust?
Right.
If trust doesn't exist, I'm not sure you or I would want to be a part of it.
Right. And how do you build trust is by showing up as the real you, transparency, vulnerability, and in the Business Like We're Human book, one of the humane business practices is creating an authentic relationship culture. Because I remember we were talking about this years ago, this this thought or need to show up as business people and have it all together and be perfect, and from there leading your business, that creates distrust. Like it feels too fake, and so creating these authentic relationships, it starts at our small business level, and if that's where trust is created, well, then it flows out to the corporate level and to the government level. But yeah, that is the work. We have forgotten how to really have human relationships. I think it really comes.
Yeah. Because if you, like, yeah, if you indicate that you've got everything together and you really don't, people are going to feel that. Like, so, but the problem is, right, is when you're really honest about, like, the struggles or the challenges or the difficulties, you put yourself out there to be criticized and, be judged. And what I've learned, and I'm sure you've learned this, is that we have to learn how to like ourselves enough, right? Fall in love with ourselves enough, trust ourselves enough that even if we put that out there and we get criticized, it doesn't stop us. It doesn't matter. We're still willing to show up. And that courage is what also inspires people to, like, trust us more, because we didn't just do it because it was going to be rainbows and unicorns. Like, we did it because we wanted to be real with people. And that's hard. And people respect that we're okay being criticized and judged. And that's kind of what true leadership is about.
Yeah. Yeah, you're so right. I remember these early days in your Atlas community, and like sometimes tears, right? Because it was just so hard. It really is hard. Yeah, I'm just trying to see how, we started with money, and then you go into these really deep conversations, because I think I noticed that in the Marketing Like a Human program as well, whenever we talk about the P of pricing, which is really, let's talk about money, that's when it gets really deep and vulnerable, and it just really touches us to our core, this whole idea of money. And yeah, that's why I think you writing a novel about that, it's so much more touching than just writing another business book or financial book on how to do this. So yeah, I think you really nailed it with this one.
That makes me
Congratulations
so
again.
happy. My publisher wanted a nonfiction book, and I had a deal on the table, and I walked away from it to be able to write this book. I was like, you don't understand. This is what people need right now. Like, they don't need another nonfiction book about abundance. Like, I understand it might sell, but it won't have the impact in people's lives that I feel capable of writing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll make sure we'll share it far and wide. So again, if you're listening, please do check out the Money Catalyst. Do you want to share where they can find it, Leisa, and all your other links?
Sure. Yeah. Moneycatalyst.book.com is where you can get access to the links to find it online. There's resellers all over the world that have access to it. And there's also free bonuses, meditations, and other things that go with the book that are available for free when you buy the book. And yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah. Thanks again for being here and going deep. I love that. And I know you do too. So
Thank you for the conversation. Thank you.
wonderful. Thanks, Leisa. Thanks so much for watching and being part of a generation of marketers who cares for yourself, for your clients, and for the planet. We really are change makers before we are marketers. So go ahead, be the change you want to see in the world. And I hope to see you again next week. Take care.